showing on my side. Oh, yeah. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. I suppose there's lots of you tuning in across the world, as we tend to do on these live episodes of Red Tinted Glasses. Welcome back to another episode, of course. Calum, we're recording this on Thursday evening after celebrating John McGinn's arse. We're going to lament Aberdeen making an arse things in the capital because, boy, did things not go to plan on Saturday.
The game didn't go to plan, but that intro went to plan. Quite enjoyed that one. Well done. A lot of people predicting I'm going to be grumpy today. In the comments, if you are tuning in on YouTube whilst it's live, be sure to get involved. Let us know what you think. I'm not as grumpy as I would have been had we done it on Monday or Tuesday. I've had some time to, gather myself. I finally brought myself to watch the highlights on Thursday. I'm just more annoyed about the defending rather than anything else, but we'll get stuck into it, and I'm looking forward to getting it off my chest.
Yeah, good to have a lot of you already joining in the comments. As Calum says, feel free to get involved throughout the show. We'll bring up some of your thoughts. Paul Cockwell, the resident Highby that tunes in, maybe we won't bring up your thoughts, but I know you're going to probably enjoy some salty tears that we'll have. But Calum, I suppose we'll start with the positives. It'll probably last about 3 minutes because that's when Aberdeen took the lead. With the kind of was dubious on who would start in place of the suspended Leighton Clarkson. We thought it would be Matty Kennedy. Jim Goodwin favoured Duke, and he must be thinking this manager lark is fairly easy when that decision pays off after 3 minutes. Some good build-up play down the left-hand side of Aberdeen, culminating in a brilliant ball in from Hayden Coulson and excellent header from Duke, not an own goal as your drunken state may have thought.
Yeah, it was down the other end. It was far away. I thought it was an own goal to start with, but no, I was quite excited about the prospect of Miofsky and Duke starting together and play together. It didn't last as long as we would have hoped, but Duke continuing his goal scoring form, and he must be sort of forcing himself in to be that number one striker, to be that number one choice. It started getting towards that. It's was like 3 goals in 3 games now between Annan, County, and then Hibs. All for it, but yeah, it cued some rapturous scenes, if that makes sense, in the end. Despite the fact I had no idea how the ball went in the back of the net, but it was a fantastic ball in from Hayden Coulson in the first place, and Steve messages us on the Twitter page, and him and a few of Hayden's mates were at the game. I bumped into them, kind of forgot and heard their accent, and then it all kind of came together, and started banging on about how my family's from Gateshead and made an arse of myself, no doubt. So, yeah, usual, really.
I did also appreciate the reference to Ryan Porteous as well. Not that we'll disclose that on here, but didn't enjoy that as well. Things probably felt rosy at that point when we go away from home, and for a change, actually, Calum, start positively, get ourselves on the front foot, because that's something we've been discussing on the podcast before, is that we're quite slow starters. So quite strange that we start the game slowly and then, rapidly, and then resort to going into our shells, because for those at work that said that were in attendance, they said to me that once we took the lead, it very much felt like we just wanted to defend that lead for the rest of the game. Did you get that sense as well?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there was a big decision that came later on in the half, but prior to that, we were not really doing anything. I mean, David Marshall had very little to do other than pick the ball out of his net once. The only other chance I could think of is it was a Duke header that Porteous then poked over his own bar. And essentially, we didn't do anything. It was weird. We've been crying out for fast starts. We got one, but then as soon as instead of going for the kill almost and chasing that second goal or whatever, and then maybe the crowd turns, things like that at Easter Road, started sitting in and letting them come at us, and well, it didn't work at all, did it?
No, it didn't. And for the pressure that Hibs had in that first half, I suppose we've got to praise Kelle Roos, because he pulled off some excellent. It was an excellent double save, albeit the offside flag did go up. Not that he was going to know too much about it. And this was going to be one of the things when we were doing our moments of the match. segment in the podcast, and you try and do it on the back of a defeat. But I think for me, that double save has got to be my moment of the match, because for some of the question marks around his goalkeeping from set pieces, that instinct to produce that double save, and had it not been for him, I think we could have been speaking about a much heavier defeat.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Sort of maybe starting to prove some of my doubts wrong. Maybe he certainly looks a fantastic shot stopper and things like that. And I think the concerns over him commanding his box are sort of decreasing. He's looking a bit more confident and things like that. But he came up in moments where we absolutely needed him, because Hibs ended up with 25 attempts, 8 of them on target. And had it not been for Kelle Roos, it could have been a lot worse. I also saw his partner in the away end and was like, congratulations on signing for Aberdeen, ladies. So it wasn't a good day for me, bumping into people.
Yeah, it wasn't a good day for our defence either. Sitting in when we kind of defend, not a good move, as Kaiser says. And, for the confidence that Kelle Roos is maybe getting is probably come down to playing in front of that regular back four. But we're going to have to change that when we return from this international break that we're currently on just now, because Liam Scales saw red. No complaints on the booking he picked up for the heavy challenge in midfield from you, Calum?
At the time, plenty complaints. Oh, it's a brilliant challenge. Definitely won the ball. Having seen it again on Sports Scene and various things, I think he maybe does get a touch on the ball, but there's no doubt that it's a bit overzealous, and definitely catches a lot of the Hibs player as well. So can't really have too many complaints about it being a yellow card. I think on other days you maybe don't see the card given, but it was a pretty strong challenge, and then minutes later we all know what happened.
Yeah, so no complaints around that, but there will have been complaints from the Hibs fans when there was an incident prior to the one we're going to come on to, where there was a ball into the box and Ross McCrory's left arm is out and extended, and probably should have been a penalty on especially when the referee's giving a corner. I'm not sure if he's thinking that's hit his shoulder, but again, the linesman could maybe help him out. I can never remember from Easter Road if the linesman's actually on that side that the incident happened.
He was, yes, he was.
Yeah, so again, just showing the incompetence of the officials, but probably further highlighting the incompetence at the penalty decision. What was your initial reaction at the game? Could you understand why it was given?
Not especially. I mean, slightly missed it a little bit, but I've seen it since. There's no way it's a penalty. I think, as annoying as it is, Porteous very clever in what he's done. In terms of the way he's tried to make it look, it was sort of he's an inexperienced referee, despite Jim Goodwin trying to warn him about what Porteous is like. But I mean, first of all, he's holding Liam Scales' shirt up, and then eventually Scales puts his hand on him, but then Porteous puts his hand around Liam Scales' neck and puts him in a headlock before falling to the ground, making it look like Scales has fallen on top of him, when really he's dragging him down on top of him. Absolutely conned. I think that was a good word for Jim Goodwin to use, and I'm not even surprised really with Ryan Porteous at all, but and it was very, very costly with a red card as well. I mean, it was never a penalty. I mean, yes, they probably should have had one for the handball, but that wouldn't have come with the red card. Annoying, just very, very annoying, and there's nothing we can do about it. And apparently, Dermot Gallagher says, given it was a second bookable offence, with VAR, apparently they would have been able to change it.
Oh, well, we're gonna come on to VAR in a minute, but on Porteous's role in the penalty incident, is it clever from Ryan Porteous tangling with Liam Scales in that manner, given Scales is also on a booking, so knows if the referee makes that decision, he's also likely to get him sent off. Is it naive defending from Liam Scales as well, or do you also need a bit of a stronger referee? Because there's been a lot of comments, I suppose, from the weekend that the referee was guessing and just trying to even things up because Hibs didn't get that penalty. You sometimes do see that, they realise they've made a mistake and then at the first opportunity try and make amends. But, I mean, talk about changing a game completely.
Well, yeah, I mean, you give them a perfect chance to score and we're down to 10 men for the rest of the game. And very, very frustrating. I think, well, Jim Goodwin said that when they are, before the game, regarding set pieces, they said, if you're the one marking Porteous, don't get tight because you'll do something like that.
Yeah.
Scales, unfortunately, did get tight. And for me, to be fair, as soon as there's contact, I can understand, he's wanting to try and get back goal side, stop Porteous potentially from scoring. But just as soon as there's contact, give him a little bit of space, and then there's no way he can try and buy something, which they should not all know he will try and do at any opportunity he can. And Scales gives him the perfect chance, to be fair, despite the fact it's still unjust. Just really, really, it is maybe naive, and Scales will learn from it, but unfortunately it's come at a point where it's cost us 3 points or even 1 point, given the way we were going. If we could maybe held on to for one, maybe that would have been good.
Yeah, and I suppose that's kind of the point that Noel Blaha makes in the comments here, and it's probably quite a good point as well. Given the certainly the post-match comments that Jim Goodwin was coming out with about, he joked with the referee pre-match about what Porteous is like, and as Noel says, given the team talk and Goodwin sharing that everyone was knowing something could come from Porteous, Scales needs to switch with another defender or keep his distance. And it is a fair point when you are on a booking in those situations. He could have maybe said to Anthony Stewart, I'm thinking of our next best defender here, say, could you pick up the man instead and, defend that instead of Liam Scales, no?
I think Stewart was also on a booking, if I remember rightly. But I might not be remembering rightly, which is, it's a real possibility there. But I don't know, maybe they make more experienced Anthony Stewart, maybe a bit more physical, maybe deals with it better as well. And as well as that, there's sort of Ross McCrory and things like that as well. But I think naive, but at the same time, Porteous has absolutely bought it. I mean, I suppose clever in the way that he's held on to Scales, and then if he falls down, obviously Scales is going to come down on top of him. But he was already on his way down, and Scales has got two hands up in the air, showing that he's not holding on to him, and he goes to the ground. And thank you, Kaiser. Someone paying a little bit more attention than me, perhaps at the time, but I have a vague memory of being like, yes, Stuart's already on a booking too.
Yes, he was on a booking, and as Paul Donaldson says, it maybe was a penalty, but is the second yellow extremely harsh? I think when the referee's giving a decision in that situation, I think booking or not, you're always likely to see a card for those types of fouls in the box nowadays, especially now when we've got this whole double jeopardy rule that you can't get sent off for last man challenges. Well, unless you're Declan Gallagher, of course, at Pataudry. But I don't know if I agree that the second booking was harsh. I think I'm more leaning towards the point of view that Noel has, where getting involved in that sort of tangle with Ryan Porteous is a bit naive, albeit, as you said, with him being in a headlock, there's not really much he can do to get out of the situation.
Yeah, no, I would tend to agree as well. I mean, it's ridiculous, and no matter the more times I watch it, it sort of seems to get a little bit worse as well, and sort of just can't really believe what's happened. But at that point, the penalty, they get a chance to equalise right before half time. We go down to 10 men, having been pretty terrible, other than the goal as well throughout the most of the first half. I said at half time, as soon as that happened, I thought I'd absolutely take 1 point right now, bite your hand off. No, if we could hold on, then it would have been probably a good result at that stage. But alas, no, we sort of further capitulated defensively.
Yeah, and I suppose we'll still stay on this kind of incident a little bit more, because obviously Goodwin's come out and, in the Red TV interview, and I think in the press as well, he's called him a cheat. And that's resulted in Jim Goodwin coming up for an SFA charge for bringing the game into disrepute or whatever nonsense the SFA want to throw at him. But Robbie Neilson last season, when Lewis Ferguson won the penalty at Tynecastle, albeit went on to miss said penalty, came out in his press conference on Sports Scene and accused Lewis Ferguson of blatant cheating. There was no subsequent charge for Robbie Neilson, but yet Jim Goodwin faces a hearing on the 6th of October, so should remain on the touchline for the home game against Kilmarnock, but questionable whether or not he will be on the touchline for the trip to Tannadice coming up a week after. Was Jim Goodwin right to be so forward in his comments about Ryan Porteous?
I do actually. Graham Goodbrand has got involved in the comments and said basically what I'm thinking. Correct calling a cheat in private. I think when they're on the pitch, there's some images of them afterwards where Goodwin does go over and have a talk. I think that's fine, and it's probably the correct word to describe him, certainly in that moment. But I think he maybe has to choose his words a little bit better. I don't know whether he, sort of try to make a point or an example of it. But again, when you consider maybe he's got in his mind the Neilson comments on Ferguson, and there was no retrospective action there with that. So I don't know. Maybe he should be a little bit more careful with his words, and he could certainly have maybe alluded to that a little bit more rather than coming out and calling him a blatant cheat.
Yeah, and as Kaiser said, there's better words to describe Porteous than a cheat. And again, as Gooby says, we can probably say them on here. Jim Goodwin can't exactly come out and say them. There has also been a point of view that Jim Goodwin coming out and saying that Ryan Porteous is a cheat, or that he conned the ref, whatever you want to term or phrase you want to use. And Kelle Roos has also come out and said, similar slander towards Ryan Porteous as well. But there has been, certain viewpoints from the AFC social media that this has been a kind of deflection tactic from Jim Goodwin, that he's used Ryan Porteous's acting, as we've described him as the pantomime villain, to deflect from what was, by all accounts from those there, an extremely poor performance, probably in line with what we saw away from home last season. Do you agree with that point of view, or do you see it as a bit of both?
It is a bit of both, not to sit on the fence too much and get a sore arse, but it is a massive game-changing moment. They equalise immediately. We are down to 10 men for the rest of the game. But prior to that, we had been absolutely awful after taking the lead in the first half. Time wasting isn't great, to be fair, but we were really bad, so I can certainly see where people are coming from. And in the second half, we created very, very little. I mean, the Miovski chance that I was even in the stadium to see after Jane Richardson put it on a plate for him. Other than that, didn't create anything. I know it's difficult when you're 10 men away from home against Hibs, who, to be fair, did play pretty well, even when it was 11 versus 11. But not only that, there's also the changes Goodwin made. I don't think helped his case either at all. To make that change, to bring on Paul Vara, to take off Duke over Miovski as well, given the way Miovski's been playing compared to Duke, take on Paul Vara. Before half-time, we could have seen it out when you've got Jack Milne sitting on the bench, a centre-back. If he's there, use him. Put him out on loan otherwise, if you're not going to play him. And if he's as highly thought of as he's meant to be at Pittodrie, then given that chance, what's the worst that can happen? We're down to 10 men anyway. If we lose, it's hardly going to be the kids' fault. And again, since I've mentioned Paul Vara, he doesn't seem up to it, but I really feel sorry for him in the situations he's getting thrown in. Away at Celtic Park and in that situation as well.
Yeah, and the substitution, I take it that was made then once Martin Boyle scored. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Martin Boyle equalising, and as you said in our chat with Michael Moan in our group chat, you said he was bound to score after, of course, the birth of his second child a couple of days before the game. And then when I saw that he had, I was like, well, you've just cursed us for this weekend. But I was surprised, and to see Duke coming off before halftime, Do you think Jim Goodwin should have just waited until half-time? Because, again, the guys at work said, and I've seen this comment as well on social media, that it was almost a really bad poker play from Jim Goodwin. He's shown Lee Johnson his hand before giving 15 minutes for Lee Johnson to wonder what we might do to change things being down to 10 men.
Yep, absolutely. I think at that point, when it's so close to half-time, just wait, see it out. Okay, we've got 10 men and things maybe aren't ideal at that point, but it's only a few minutes you got to hold out for. I think he went a little bit too early. I mean, I don't know if it would have changed the outcome of the match in the long run. Probably not. But then you've got maybe a chance to prepare Jack Milne or Dante Polvara for over the 50 minutes of half-time. Young players getting thrown into a not ideal situation. Rather, you've got 15 minutes to prepare them for it, and they can get properly warmed up rather than being chucked on and that being that. And as it said, show your hand early. And I still think it shouldn't have been Duke that got taken off anyway.
Yeah, we'll come on to some of the players that are maybe not performing right now in a second, but just one of the comments have come in from Paul Donaldson, and I never really thought of this with the sending off, and I know a few of you have agreed with this comment as well during this live, so I'll read it out for those that are maybe tuning in on audio later on. We effectively lost 3 players through that sending off: Liam Scales, Duke, and then Ross McCrory from our midfield. And we've kind of talked about our team almost being like a house of cards. And when you take one of those defenders out, McCrory comes out of midfield and almost that house of cards begins to collapse. Well, saying it like that when you lose 3 players, it does have a huge impact. And if only we had a transfer window where we could have signed another centre-back that we all were, glaringly crying out for.
Yeah, I do agree. I didn't really think of that. I obviously thought, McCrory isn't the same player, and he can't affect the game as he would in midfield when he's in defence. So it automatically changes everything, and then you've automatically got one of the right-sided players playing on the left, which is never ideal either, and then taking Duke off as well. I mean, yeah, we mentioned it, we shouted it from the rooftops, and I'm not the only ones at all. Many people can see that we still need some sort of defensive cover out there, and if not, give Jack Milne that chance. You said it to me on message. I've said it already on here. What's the point in him being there if he's not going to get an opportunity to prove what he can do?
But then, yeah, what is the point in a Jack Milne? Is he just there to meet a quota in terms of youth players being involved in the matchday squad? But what's also frustrating from that point of view, you've got 2 defenders on the bench anyway. You've got Jack McKenzie, and then you also got Jack Milne as well. Now, Jack McKenzie comes on later on in the game, replacing Hayden Coulson. And again, I know there's maybe been some question marks around his fitness with the substitution of him coming off. But we've spoken about on here, could Jack McKenzie be that answer for left-sided centre-back in situations like this? We're not saying he is, we're not saying we know, but surely it is better to put a natural defender into defence instead of weakening our team in the manner that we've done. And it goes back to the point that Paul makes, because we've lost McCrory from midfield to strengthen our defence, but then we've also had to weaken our attack to replace McCrory in midfield by bringing on Dante Polvara. And to go back to the point you made as well, Calum, I do feel sorry for Dante this season, because it's exactly as you said, he's come into 2 games in pretty unfortunate circumstances and has come in for a lot of criticism. Now, outside of, was it St Johnstone away, I think, when he got 3 minutes on the pitch, he's not featured for us outside of those 2 games. Pretty much like Jack Milne, if they're not going to get regular game time, can we not put them out on loan? But the problem, I suppose, for us, certainly defensively right now, is we're struggling. But when Connor Barron comes back fit, I don't see where Dante fits into this team right now, which, again, is a point that Kaiser is making there. And when Connor Barron does return to fitness, maybe in January we could put Dante out, because he's not really, been exposed to too much Scottish football. Let's be honest, I know people maybe again listening back are going to say, yeah, well, he had some bottom six experience. Those games were as good as dead rubber once survival was, secured. That St Mirren game, I thought he looked good, but let's be honest, now this season we're realising that it was a really hard marker to judge again. So again, I've seen some people say, there's maybe been a bit of an overreaction meltdown, but does it then go back to the point, Calum, that we are still a work in progress? There is still, stuff required on this team right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as much as we're a work in progress, also so are Hibs. I'm sure the game up here in November will be very different. Tawdry under the lights on a Friday night. It's hard not to get carried away when it is so bad, basically. But when the game's ruined by one decision as well, it's even more difficult. I think maybe even more than a lot of others are a bit guilty and getting carried away. When we stuck a few results together, I thought we're back. It's going to be brilliant. But results like this are to be expected, I suppose, and especially given that situation. But there is definitely still work to be done, and not only on the pitch, but also in terms of off the pitch with recruitment to get the squads to where Goodwin and whoever else, the head of recruitment and things like that, want it to be. I think we're just going to have to be patient and suffer and try and enjoy the good results, the good times when they do come around. I'm saying that as if we're going to be in another relegation scrap. I don't think we will be. I think we probably will end up in the top six and hopefully qualifying for Europe in some aspect. But it's sometimes tough going week to week when it's brilliant one week and then the next week it's all doom and gloom again.
Yeah. Also, shout out to you that thought the game was the late night Friday down there. I thought I'd get that in. Ryan's in the comments. I'll go back to, obviously, we were speaking about Jim Goodwin, in his mind, rightfully going for Ryan Porteous in his rant about the refereeing decision. But it seems to push aside any criticism of our team thereafter. He's probably publicly, going after Ryan Porteous. But then, as Gooby said, should have maybe done that privately. Do you think privately he's maybe gone through a few players? Because there has been some question marks around certain players' performances that we will kind of come on to a little bit later on in this episode as well.
Yes, I'm sure he has made his feelings known. Absolutely. On that point, I would like to know if he's calling Ryan Porteous a cheat in public. I'd like to know what he's calling behind his back. However, I can imagine a few players after that result will have had a few stern words in their ear from Jim Goodwin. Let's hope so, and maybe avoid criticizing them in the public eye, throwing them under the bus, and then that's something more for the media to latch onto, and it all sort of spirals from that. But Ryan is absolutely correct in saying that there should be criticism for a team's performance from that point. I'd also like to point out that I'm not Ryan Porteous. He says, come on to defend yourself, are you?
Yeah. Well, defend yourself. Well, I wish we would learn how to defend properly when we won't go down to 10 men, because defending is not what we did. As Josh Campbell was granted the freedom of Easter Road to glide through the centre of our defence like a hot knife through butter to give Hibs a 2-1 lead. Really, Calum, it is so painful watching these goals going against us. It was something the guy at work said to me, when you go down to 10 men, teams tend to make themselves stuffy, tend to make themselves hard to beat. But Jesus, you just need to look at Hibs' second and third goals, and it's night and day in terms of level of defending.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you're even just when you're away from home in general, at times you're going to have to sort of sit tight, sit deep, that low block, if you will, very structured and disciplined. But right in the middle of our defence, there was just a massive gap that Josh Campbell strolled into. A man that Michael was not particularly complimentary of, or has never been particularly complimentary of. Might have changed now, however. But he just afforded so much space. It was unbelievable. And I get it's hard with 10. They've got an extra man. There's bound to be gaps, but not right in the heart of the defence, for goodness sake.
Yeah, and the third goal doesn't really get much better either from an Aberdeen point of view as well, because again, at 2-1 down, you have maybe a half chance again with 10 men to get back into the game, but it doesn't really help when there's about 3 players ball watching the ball come into the box. I think I highlighted Ramadani, Stewart, Jack McKenzie maybe as well if you want to be really critical, but again, it's just really poor from an Aberdeen point of view, 10 men or not.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I don't have much else to add to that. I mean, did you expect anything different, really? I suppose, but yeah, we did not cover ourselves in glory at all, and it's not like those were the only chances they had. There was one where the ball came into the box, Kelle Roos palms it out, and then he's the one reacting quickest to save it. No one else getting a block in or anything like that. I think it was an effort from Joe Newell, but no, it was very, very poor. And I think their big striker occupying several of them, several defenders at the time. And to be fair, credit to him, he came in for his first start for Hibs. Not going to try and pronounce his name, but he looked like a handful, which was annoying. But we were just, it was terrible. These gaps and things do open up, but you can't excuse ball watching. I mean, come on, it was poor. And you're looking at someone like Stewart to, he's meant to be the leader in there, and he's well part of it. Ridiculous.
Yeah, and he stands there with his hands up thinking, well, who's picking up who? And I'm like, well, again, should there not be that little bit of organisation and leadership? Someone's got to take responsibility in that. But, again, this is another point that's been made. Again, as Kaiser says, take away the games against Livingston and St Mirren. We've not really played well this season. And you've also got to counter the fact that those 2 games that we did play well in were against 10 men. And I think it has been safe to say that we have struggled this season against 11 men. Ross County wasn't exactly amazing. St Johnstone was down to a moment of brilliance from Leighton Clarkson. It has been a struggle for the side this season. But again, to avoid anyone saying that we're having a meltdown, we're overreacting, we might be sitting, in 8th in the table, but we're 3 points off Hearts.
Starting to sound like last season where we're only 5 points off 4th. He'll be fine. I do agree. There is a lot of our games have been influenced by red cards. We'll say that much. There's definitely clearly still work to be done. I mean, once we actually have the full complement of players, I suppose, fit, that'll be good. But we haven't been, absolutely firing. We've done enough to get, the points in some of these games. Some not all the times, but I think the consistency will come when we can sort of just. It takes time. It's a lot of new players in at once. I don't know how long I'm going to be able to use this excuse, but the consistency will hopefully start to come together the further we get into the season, or that would be the case if we didn't have a massive fucking break in the middle of it.
Well, I would also say consistency might come if we don't have to change our fucking defence every second game as well. True. Moving Ross McCrory out of midfield, that would also be helpful. And of course, before someone corrects me, we are actually 7th on goal difference ahead of Motherwell. But of course, that is after 7 games with the Rangers game being postponed. We do have quite an important October coming up, and we will get into kind of how important October is for maybe a lot of fans in terms of maybe pressure on Jim Goodwin, but also for fans in seeing what this squad is really made of. Because, as I said, 3 points off of 3rd just now. We've got a gap of 3 points to St Johnstone, who occupy 9th, and then 5 to County in 10th. So I think, positionally, there will be a lot of change between 3rd and 8th, over the next few weeks, but it just shows how quickly your position can change with a few results. And also what's kind of been brought up on the back of the defeat this weekend was Bojan Miovski. Obviously, you highlighted the miss that came, albeit at 3-1 down, but his performances away from home haven't quite hit the heights as his home form. Do you think that's just coincidence, or you said yourself at the top of the show that Duke's maybe pushing for a more regular start up front? Could that be in place of Bojan?
I think that's very, very possible, going off recent performance. But I also do think that Bojan Miovski is very much Jim Goodwin's man. There's been a lot of controversy around that striker position involving a certain American who, by the way, back on the bench, back involved. So, good for him. But Bojan hasn't been good enough these last 3 games, especially. I don't think he's been helped by some of the service, albeit, there was that chance that was on a plate back from Jane Richardson at Easter Road. I suppose also when you're away from home, it's slightly different from when we're playing at Pittodrie. The onus is on us. We're in control. There's a lot of creative passages of play. There absolutely wasn't that on Saturday, so I suppose it is hard for Bojan Miovski to then sort of force his way into the game without coming ridiculously deep to get on the ball. And even then, when can he make things happen? So try not to be too critical. Again, still early days. We've certainly seen what he's capable of. Just again, getting that more consistently would be fantastic. But Duke, on the other hand, at least he's there to step up when Bojan hasn't been hitting those heights, because he has been fantastic. And I think if he's not starting that killer game, which we'll preview next week, he will be very disappointed, and I would be very disappointed too.
Yeah, and I suppose with Leighton Clarkson still being suspended, he's not exactly done his case any harm by starting a 44-minute cameo and getting a goal in what was Aberdeen's only shot on target as well. But yeah, I feel Ramirez is very much out the picture, but obviously we're limiting ourselves to 2 strikers, and if one does go off the boil, but look, it's you can't argue with what he has done. Again, as you say, with limited service, and you're right, his game isn't dropping deep. I really feel his game is hanging off the shoulder of the last defender, and I think he's possibly starting for Macedonia tonight. So it'll be interesting to see how he does. Let's keep everything crossed that he doesn't pick up an injury whilst away on international duty. And likewise, Duke, he's in Bahrain for a friendly with Cape Verde. So we've got to hope that those away on international duty return with a full bill of health as well.
Absolutely, and hopefully with some good performances, because if Duke and Miovski can both go away and score whilst they're away with their national teams, that would be good for their confidence as well. And so ideally looking at Bojan Miovski in that sense, because if he can get back on that goal trail, albeit with Macedonia, then he comes back into training next week and he's buzzing. So let's hope that happens, and we can see him getting back to the performances that we know he can deliver, and certainly on a more consistent basis.
Yeah, and obviously, despite his disastrous weekend, Liam Scales managed to earn himself a call-up to the Irish national team, and maybe will feature at Hampden at the weekend. I'm sure he won't have to face Ryan Porteous. Well, I dare Steve Clarke to ruin our Nations League campaign and involve Ryan Porteous this weekend. But excellent for Liam to get that call-up. But speaking from an Aberdeen point of view of trying to sign him on a permanent basis, I suppose only just gives Celtic extra incentive to up the asking price.
Yeah, I think so. Not great. I don't know how involved he's going to be, because he was brought in after someone dropped out through injury, things like that. But I suppose that's what shows what happens when he is playing regularly. He can't get in that side, but yeah, hopefully it won't affect an asking price too much, despite how sort of skeptical I am that we will end up with him permanently.
Yeah.
But I would be pretty happy if Porteous and Scales were both playing, to be honest, on Saturday, just for the entertainment value and for the narrative rather than anything else. That'd be pretty good, rather than being happy about Porteous playing for Scotland. And also hope Scott McKenna has had a word, because he was in the away end at Easter Road. Apparently, and I didn't see him, but apparently he was there. So hopefully he's had a word after seeing that in training with Ryan Porteous as well.
Yeah, he was there and saw lots of pictures on social media. Good to see him coming back and checking up on how we're getting along. Another player, actually, there's 2 other Aberdeen players away on international duty, Ryan Duncan and Evan Towler away with Scotland. And there's been some question marks around little muscle boy, sticky toffee pudding lover, Vicente Bazawin. Another game where he maybe flattered to deceive Calum, and Shayden Morris has been getting his chance recently. Certainly, I've not been overly impressed. Certainly, with Shayden in the final third. again, people saying, what does Ryan Duncan need to do to get a chance in the first team currently, especially with Matt Kennedy, coming back to fitness as well? Is Ryan Duncan further down the pecking order? Is he another player that should maybe be chopping on the door looking for a loan move in January to get some first team minutes under his belt ahead of next season? Or can he force his way into this team?
But the way things are going right now and the lack of productivity of Bissawin and, with Matty Kennedy's fitness, humming and haying sort of every now and then, I put this way, I wouldn't be against if the team lines came out on Saturday and Ryan Duncan was in it. If he was playing against Kilmarnock, I'd be pretty happy. I think he's obviously very highly thought of a Tawdry word that they're trying to tie him down on an even longer deal. And I think his current contract expires in 2024. I would not be against him getting his chance. I think he's capable player. Saw the way he came on and influenced the game against Annan, albeit considering the opposition and their tiring legs, having probably worked shift earlier in the day. He's certainly capable. And in terms of Vinny, he's coming out my fantasy team. Put it that way.
Yeah.
Not being happy, given how good he was in the pre-season, in the Premier Sports Cup. I had my high hopes for him. I know you've had your criticisms, but he is. I'd like to see some more end product, and I know he's young, and the consistency and things like that will also come with him. But we need to start seeing a little bit more, I think.
Yeah, kind of Kaiser saying in the comments, he isn't doing enough for him. Bit is here and there, but that's about it. I got lambasted for my criticism of Vinny last season for saying exactly that. He isn't consistent enough in games. We see flashes here and there. And I think someone on social media has been pointing out that he's not actually had any assists in his time at Aberdeen as well, which is quite concerning for a winger. And then just when we were speaking about wingers as well, I've forgotten about Calum Roberts as well, who, of course, we signed in the summer as well, currently out with a hamstring injury. Probably a few of you else have forgotten about him already. Hopefully we see him back sometime soon, just to give us something different, especially when you're speaking about, maybe a lack of service up to the strikers. We've not really had a chance to see him at all, really, for Aberdeen, just a fleeting appearance, of course, this season. So it kind of begs the question, how you think we've kind of done so far this season, Calum, as we, are in this international break. 10 points out of a possible 21, should have been out of 24, but something got in the way of that game. So just the 7 games so far, pre-international break, 10 points. Where do you see, how do you rate that? Are Kaiser saying it's pish poor. Do you agree it's pish poor, or do you kind of see it with the squad being a work in progress? You're a bit middle of the road. I don't want to put you back on that fence again.
I know. I don't think I'd describe it as pish poor, but I'd describe it as poor. I think we probably, coming into it, when we had a little look at the fixture schedule, especially, for this month, we thought we'd maybe be a little bit better off than we were. And I think we probably should be. We should probably be on 12 points, certainly when you think about the Ross County game, and, dropping points against Motherwell in the fashion that we did was pretty damn poor. And then obviously the Hibs one, which is a bit of it was a malarkey. That's the words I'm going to use to describe it. I think we will get better, and the consistency will come a little bit more. I think that's been my word of this episode, certainly so far anyway. But I would like to see us having picked up a few more points. I think it will come, but we're definitely very much still a work in progress. I think that's abundantly clear.
Yeah, I'm probably disappointed in it. I think we're not where we should be at this stage in the games against Ross County and Motherwell in particular. We should have got more out of them than we did. And I think, the fact that we're still in touching distance of third, you could argue is okay for the rebuild that we've done in the summer, but it still irks me that we could probably be comfortably sitting in third just at this point, and being in that position of teams have to chase us, not us hoping other teams drop points. But it depends if you're a glass half full, glass half empty type of guy. That said, do you feel October now is a hugely important month for the club? And really, will we see what this squad and what Jim Goodwin is really made of? Because we've got 5 league games, starting with Kilmarnock at home before a trip to Dundee United away. That's the current bottom 2 sides in the league.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm expecting, I was going to say hoping for, but I'm going to chuck out there. I'm expecting 6 out of 6 from those two. We followed that up with a game against Hearts at home, then Motherwell and Rangers follow before the month ends. Out of 15, Calum, what are you expecting Aberdeen to take away from the month of October?
I am expecting 8 points, probably. I think we are terrible away from home still. That is clear. And we have not won anywhere else other than Perth.
McDermott and Livingston.
Yeah. I can't see us winning at Tannadice, which is bizarre considering how badly they've been, but they've started pulling themselves together a little bit, albeit I think it's a win, a draw, and a loss. They have certainly looked a lot better. Have they announced Liam Fox as their product manager now?
Not officially, but I think he's set to be announced, and then they
Right.
want Stevie Crawford as the assistant manager as well. So
they are sort of maybe pulling things back together a little bit.
watch them get their new manager bounce that we never.
Exactly. Hearts, they seem. I still don't think Hearts are that good, which is ridiculous. But I think they just know how to beat the rest of the dross in the league. Basically, that's how they know how to do it.
For me, that Hearts game will be interesting as well because it comes after they play Fiorentina, which could be
away as well.
An important game for them in terms of qualification. And Fiorentina haven't looked amazing so far in Europe. I know Hearts fans are maybe getting confident of winning that game. So it'd be interesting to see if there's any European hangover, although the way they dispatched Motherwell with relative ease on Sunday maybe suggests otherwise, especially, going away and then playing away again in the league the following Sunday.
Yeah.
I'd be disappointed with anything less than 10 from the month of October.
Right, okay. Well, I'd be disappointed with less than 10 as well, but I think we'll get 8. It's just unfortunate Hearts aren't playing away in Turkey before they play us. That would have been ideal. But I think that'll be a tough one. I think that'll be another good indication of where we are. In fact, to be honest, all the games this month will be a fantastic indication of how we're doing so far. And I think it's really important that we do sort of get out of this month in the top 6, looking like we're going to be competing for Europe, because then very quickly after we will, there's a few games in November, and then we've got that break. And if we are not looking good in that break, I know people will not be happy, and I probably won't be either.
Yeah, no, I won't be. And of course, obviously, that Dundee United game has been moved to a 6 o'clock kickoff. That was announced since the last time we've recorded, and I know Lee Seymour's in the comments asking what we make of that. So both the Dundee United away game and subsequent last game before the World Cup break, before the club head to Atlanta for their 1 week training camp and pre-season, or whatever you want to call it, friendly against an Atlanta squad. That game will also be a 6 p.m. kickoff at Tawdry. What do you make of these changes to kickoff times? Obviously, Hibs game as well being a Friday night as well. Are you happy with these changes to kickoff times? Experimenting to see if we can bring in bigger crowds.
I don't know how much effect it'll have on getting bigger crowds. I know, perhaps for availability for people who play football on Saturdays, whatever, will help. Equally, it might, certainly Dundee United away game might have some sort of an impact on the attendance.
Bougier away end.
Yeah, that's the one thing. I think people who are going there anyway will certainly be more up for it. That's how I'll put it. To put it a bit more politely, they'll be a lot more up for it. The people that are going to the game for these late kickoffs, and I'm quite liking a game under the lights as well. Quite enjoy it. I don't know. It's probably getting floodlight season just about, so I'm all for it. I don't know the impact it'll have, but a nice little change.
Yeah, although we have seen what happened last time, we had a 6 p.m. kickoff in Dundee. It didn't go too well, so hopefully it goes better this time. Of course, as well in October, Calum, we do have the Cup quarter-final against Partick Thistle in the League Cup, so a chance to get to Hampden. Of course, tickets for that game are on sale, so make sure you, if you can attend, get your tickets and hopefully cheer the Dons on to Hampden. And I suppose in October as well, Calum, league games aside, it is vitally important that we don't slip up in that cup, because it would be great to get a trip back to Hampden.
We cannot afford to lose that one. At home against the Championship side, albeit they're looking pretty decent in the Championship, not the sort of fodder that they were perhaps a couple of years ago. They are sort of getting themselves back together. But we're at home. We are the Premiership team. We absolutely have to win and get to Hampden. We need to. There's nothing else is acceptable in that game.
Yeah, although they did bust my coupon after throwing away a 2-goal lead to Cove this weekend. So a bit disappointed at that. But yes, I do agree. I think, I don't know, maybe people will say, your mindset of 8 points on a trip to Hampden would be seen as an acceptable month of October. If you are catching up, let us know your thoughts on what would be an acceptable month of October for you. But yeah, on you go.
I'm not saying it's acceptable. That's what I expect from Aberdeen, because you know what they're like.
Okay, well, I'm asking the audience what they would feel is acceptable. Is 8 points acceptable or not? Are you expecting 8 points or not? There you go. Keep you happy. But as Kaiser says in the comments as well, beating Killie at home, that's the first things first. That is the most important thing. Bounce back from the disappointment of the defeat in Edinburgh. Get that 3 points. Get that. Some people have said maybe the momentum, maybe the enthusiasm's waning slightly, but you spoke about yourself how people get carried away on the back of positive results, and I'm sure that enthusiasm will be right back if we come back from this break and beat Derek McInnes' side at Pittodrie. Of course, both him and Ash Taylor making their return to Pittodrie. There's going to be that narrative that I'm sure dominates the build up, and as we said, we'll have our preview out next week for that game as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first forwards, get them beat. I'm really worried about them coming back up here, in all fairness, but we'll discuss that a bit more in length next week when I've got a bit more time to just work myself into a shoot for no reason, because Ash Taylor's going to match Pittodrie.
Yeah, you can just see it now. Ash Taylor winner and knee slide.
Mm-hmm.
But that's something for us to discuss next week. Of course, we have looked back at the disappointment from the weekend as the Dons went down in Edinburgh to Hibs, discussed, the current form of players, and, decided whether or not this has been a meltdown. Is it a work in progress? Hopefully, you guys have enjoyed our points of view. We do enjoy doing these lives, and thank you to all of you that have engaged during the live with your thoughts. It's good to see that some are aligned with our thoughts. And again, if you do have a different opinion, as we saw on this episode, it does create good content for us to discuss as well. So thank you very much to everyone that has tuned in. If you are listening back to this episode at a later date, hope you enjoyed that as well. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, remember to hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and of course, leave a comment with your thoughts. Until next week for that Kilmarnock preview, thank you very much for watching.